Hi, so today we're going to be talking about the pop-up questions within educational videos, effects on student learning. I'm Alana Page. These are my thoughts on this paper written by Marajine Hagsman, Karen Skagger, Joanna Brostron, and Margaret Koester. I am reading this paper for my EDU 5230 Educational Technology class at Northern Vermont University. So quickly, just some authors' background information. So Marjolaine Hagsman is the main author of this paper, with Karen Skagner, Joanne Bostron, and Margaret Koester all assisting. But she did the main edits for this paper. So I did some quick research on each of them. This is one of Marjolaine's first papers she's published, but she did a lot of the main legwork and the final edits. All of the everyone that wrote this paper works at Utrecht University, which is a university overseas. Most of them have degrees in biology because they were focusing on the use of pop-up questions in educational biology videos. So this is Margaret, and then Joanne also works at Utrecht University in the biology department. She has 242 publications. Karen Sager is from the social sciences department. She has 18 publications. And last is Marjorie, who is our main writer here, who has done lots of work with these short video clips within biology education. She teaches freshman biology, which is where she's did the research for this paper. So let me get back to my slideshow. So all of our authors are very well versed in the biology content and teaching at the upper education university level. So they all have lots of experience with this, and this was their study on how to make their classes more meaningful and using the flipped classroom model in a better way. So the main argument of this paper is that including pop-up questions in educational videos can increase learning, particularly when it comes to a flipped classroom model. That's the model that's being used here, where there are videos that they need to watch outside of class, and when they come into class, they are doing applied hands-on, answering the questions and doing the lab portion that they need to already have that information understood when they come in. They were looking at if it helps with the learning the specific content the pop-up questions are on, or does it help with learning the overall content? And then just in general, does it give enhanced understanding? Were their main things. They did have a series of 4 questions that they looked at. So do students experience that pop-up questions help them in learning? Question 2, does the content of the pop-up questions result in direct testing effect? Question 3, does the presence of pop-up questions result in an indirect teaching effect, or indirect testing effect? My apologies. And 4, how do students respond to pop-up questions? So each of these questions they actually did a separate study for. So study 1, exploring students' experience with the effect of pop-up questions, they started with just a survey that went out to the students in the class that had pop-up questions. And they had a 69% response rate. The participants were just the students that were in freshman biology in, I believe, 2015. And they did this a couple studies, so looked at a couple different classes to be able to compare. And they were using all 4 of these tests were done over a 3-year period. So, sorry, I'm trying to make sure I'm looking at the right spot. Yes, so study 1 was done in 2015, and it was just this survey that was sent out, and students were asked to rate on a 5-point scale from they strongly disagree to strongly agreed, with 14 questions that basically got to the heart of, do you think the pop-up questions are helping you? On study 2, they were looking at the direct testing effect. So they were looking at if the pop-up question comes up and it's do students do better just on the concepts that the pop-up questions highlight? So they kind of highlighted certain concepts with pop-up questions and certain ones they didn't, to see if there was a difference in testing. Study 3, they measured the indirect testing effect. So if there's pop-up questions and they looked at the overall test grades altogether, did it help with students' overall understanding of the whole concept just to have questions pop up while they're learning? In the last study, there was multiple ways they did this study. It had multiple parts, but they were overall looking at how students use pop-up questions. So they started with a focus group, having them come in and had kind of a guided interview, but was able to dive into some specific questions and responses to figure out how students use the pop-up questions. And from that focus group, they created some questionnaires to go out to a wider range of students. And then they found an interesting phenomenon about how students are using the videos and rewinding. So there was an additional survey about rewinding behavior with pop-up questions. So the findings. So in study 1, they found 91% of students totally agreed that the pop-up questions specifically helped them in studying. 97% of students said just having a video helps, but 91% said specifically the pop-up questions. There were some quotes of students stating that it helped them know what to study, it helped them know to pause and when to think. Test 2, the direct testing. So they found out pop-up questions do not affect if students understood the specific content in just that question. There was no real significant results to show that. So, which is myself with my assumption that they would find, but that was not the case. So pop-up questions coming up don't just help them understand those concepts. In their indirect testing, which was test 3, they found out that having pop-up questions in a video helped the overall understanding of all the concepts in the video, because students are more focused and more tuned in. They were more likely to have a higher, I apologize, I have a dog running around. They were more likely to have a increased overall score because they didn't know when the pop-up question was going to come. Especially they had pop-up questions you had to get correct to move on to the next part of the test. Study 4, the use of pop-up questions. The overall kind of takeaways of all of those different subtests was that pop-up questions led to less students just fast-forwarding through the video to make it say it was done. And more students rewinding the video to go back and find the answers in the pop-up questions. So they were listening, and if they started to stop listening, a pop-up question came back, they would have to rewind and rewatch. They did have some students that admitted that they just clicked through each answer until they got the correct answer. But overall, there was a lot who were rewatching, re-listening to the videos. About 35% of students identified themselves that pop-up question came up and they would rewind to find the answer, which is really awesome. And that's kind of what myself as a teacher hopes to see my kids do. So my applications to my practice. This really highlighted to me the use of a tool like Edpuzzle, where you can cut a video that's already out there on YouTube and add in questions. So I have only played with Edpuzzle a little bit, but it immediately came into my head of, oh, I should use Edpuzzle. And the second, excuse me. Sorry. And the second is that I should add pop-up questions to screencasts, and even if I'm doing kind of more of a lecture-y day on a Google Meet, if we go remote, of having kind of a slideshow with using something like Nearpod, Pear Deck. I think that ties in well with this idea of pop-up questions, of a question, they have to answer it to be able to move on. And it definitely helped with students' focus and engagement. Came up multiple times as I was reading, and that's something I think we all are struggling with COVID right now, is how do we help students have a little more focus and a little more engagement. So my evaluation of the paper. I completely agree with these findings. I've taken a couple of flipped classroom classes, specifically in my undergrad. I took a flipped classroom physics course at NVU Linden. And our videos that we had were about 30 minutes to 45 minutes in length, with no pop-up questions, no breaks. And I'll be honest, I found myself zooming out, like zoning out, like not being a great student and having to rewatch them later on because I didn't remember any of it. So I really hope that the idea of a pop-up question could have helped me there, because it would have helped me draw my focus back in. And as a teacher, I think this would help a lot. It kind of made me think of like the Dora Explorer, like where she asks a question, awkwardly pauses as you're watching. But kids learn a lot from those shows, so why aren't we using those same techniques in our classroom? Is the argument supported with sufficient evidence? I felt like there was a lot of evidence in this paper. There are lots. I didn't dive in with anyone, all the graphs and percentages, but there is a lot of feedback and lots of stuff backing this. The one thing I would say is there is room for more research to be done. So this was done at a college level. I would love to see more research on this in the K-12 level, secondary, as well as elementary, because I think we're all using more and more videos now, especially with remote learning. So how do we make this best practice? And to me, from what I saw, it looks like this could be best practice of using pop-up questions as we're going to kind of chunk videos to help with overall understanding. But it would be great to have a little bit more information, which I guess I kind of just answered my last question as well. So overall, I think the paper was great. Again, here is the citation. I really enjoyed this paper, and I think it's going to have a good effect on my own teaching. Thank you for watching, and I apologize for the little bit of background noise.